begin by telling me why exactly you not to pay the euro ever go to the passport?
Well, I stopped paying the wastewater element of my water bills in 2021, and that was after Southern Water had received a record £90 million fine for illegal spills. And that at the time was really, it brought the issue to my attention, but also to media attention. And I figured, I went to protests, but I figured that something more radical had to be done. And people were asking me, why are we paying these companies? I didn't have an answer, so I stopped paying myself.
And what do you hope to achieve by refusing to pay? What is the ideal outcome?
Well, I've refused to pay now for 4.5 years. I've been threatened with court action, which is finally happening today. And during this court case, my defence basically is going to be that the water consumers have no proper legal redress against poor, inadequate service, illegal service in some respects, under the Water Industry Act 1991. The companies themselves claim, in effect, that they have a statutory obligation to provide services for which we as consumers are obliged to pay, no matter if that service isn't provided or if it seriously pollutes our environment. And I'd say that cannot be right, not in a modern civic society.
So aside from pollution, have you actually had a disruption to your own service individually?
I haven't had a disruption to my service. I mean, it's South East Water, our water provider, who's bringing the case against me today as Southern Water's billing agent. But, you know, tens of thousands of South East Water customers have been suffering from water shortages. There have been MPs who demanding action in Parliament who've actually said Helen Grant, the MP for Maidstone, questioned why anybody would want to pay their water bills when we're faced with such a poor service. You know, competition was always meant to be afforded to us when the water companies were finally privatised. But actually, I can't go to another service because Southern Water has the monopoly of service here. The only thing that I can do, really, to bring this to the attention of the government, that tens of thousands of people in this country now are withholding their bills. I'm part of an organisation called and we know this. We know that we have payment boycott action in all 11 wastewater areas in this country. Something has to be done, and it's left to us, the consumer, to do it, even with actions like this and with court cases.
Just finally, whenever you read, in the news about the CEOs of these various water companies receiving high dividends, how does that make you feel?
Well, I think there isn't anybody in this country who isn't working for a water company that doesn't see what's happening here as being some kind of legalized scam. The average salary for a water company CEO is £1.7 million. Meanwhile, our consumer bills have gone up 40% since privatisation. There's something very wrong about this. And we are, of course, in this country, the only fully privatised water service, and it's not working. It's a disgrace. It's a national disgrace. It's an international disgrace. And certainly programmes like Channel 4's Dirty Business have highlighted that to very many more people, and something has to be done. If I fail today with my argument, which is going to employ the Human Rights Act, then I hope still that I'll be highlighting the fact that the law is stacked against the consumer in this country, and therefore the law has to change. Okay.
I think we got stuck in there.
So we've just come out of the court after the court's judgment on this. I would say that anybody that was in court today, and there were quite a few people there to witness the proceedings and the judgment, could not have missed the fact that the judge was extremely sympathetic to us as defendants bringing this dispute forward. What we tried to do, in essence, is, because we are aware that water customers in this country do not have any recourse to the Consumer Rights Act 2015, because it's statutory law that that applies and not contract. Therefore, in effect, water companies in this country say they are statutorily obliged to provide services which we, as their customers, are statutorily obliged to pay for, regardless of how inadequate those services are. And that we cannot actually bring a case against them or have a dispute heard in court, a court at which a decision can be made regarding those specific disputes, because of the statutory law itself, which is inherent in the Water Industry Act 1991, by which the water industry was privatised in this country. What we attempted to do here was to apply Article 6 of the Human Rights Act within our defence. We said, in essence, that it cannot be right in a modern civic society that consumers are actually forced to pay for services which are not being provided or which seriously pollute our seas and waterways and damage our precious environment, while, importantly, denying customers a means of challenging this through the legal system. What's actually happening is that the water companies, the industry, and the court here today agreed that the only body that could do that is Ofwat. And what we tried to argue today was that Ofwat, as the regulatory authority, and the consumer complaints process, the Consumer Council for Water, Waters, the Water Redress Scheme, are actually not fit for purpose. And I gave evidence of that, especially regarding what's known as a merry-go-round, or a revolving door between water company personnel and those bodies themselves. Because of that, we didn't issue a counterclaim. Our defence was simply against the enforcement of today's debt against us. South East Water brought the case, but actually our dispute and our reason for not paying was down to the inadequate service provided by Southern Water. But of course, Southern Water weren't here today to answer to that dispute. So we go back again once more to Article 6 of the Human Rights Act. And so the conclusion that we gave was that we believe a rejection of the right to have a defence heard contravenes Article 6 of the Human Rights Act. And we therefore ask today that this case, our dispute, should be referred to a higher court to consider the Article 6 issue, and or to conclude that the amounts claimed by Southern and South East Water are not payable by us as defendants, because Southern Water's obligation under the Water Industry Act 1991 is not simply to take sewerage away from our property, but to dispose of it in a way that does not cause harm to the environment. And that an assertion from South East Water today that
Sorry, Julie. Can you read
yes,
we're getting
I haven't got to say the whole thing again, have I?
No.
Start again from the conclusion. Or what?
Wherever you want to.
Okay.
I mean, we've got like.
Well, what
I think
in essence, what we did today was assert our belief that a rejection of the right to have a defence heard contravenes Article 6 of the Human Rights Act. And we therefore asked that this case case should be referred to a higher court to consider the Article 6 issue and or to conclude that the amounts claimed by Southern and South East Water were not payable by us as the defendants because Southern Water's obligations under the Water Industry Act 1991 are not simply to take sewerage away from our property, but to dispose of it in a way that does not cause harm to the environment. And an assertion that South East Water said that there's no contractual relationship exists between a water company and its customers really only serves to underscore the human rights issue at the heart of this defence, that we have no court or tribunal in the UK to which we can take our disputes regarding inadequate service and receive judgment on those disputes. And that's the core takeaway from today's hearing and today's judgment. And that's what made us, although we never expected that a small claims court would be able to give judgment on our actual dispute with Southern Water, it was really important, it was crucial for water campaigners to bring a case like this, citing Article 6, to highlight this issue and also to underscore the fact that what this shows is that water companies in this country really have no legal recourse to hold any water company to account. I personally don't see a way round this other than the renationalisation of the water industry in this country, because of the constraints of the Water Industry Act 1991 is basically protecting these companies. And we have no proper recourse to the law. So, you know, while it was not surprising that the judgment went against us and for South East Water, it will not stop us continuing to highlight the basic injustice that's being suffered by water customers against water companies, and to highlight that something must be done by the government. If the law is against the consumers in this country regarding water companies' crimes, then the law has to be changed.
What's your plan next, Julie? Do you plan to fight the decision of the county court, or
I'm going to take time to discuss with Boycott Water Bills, which is an organisation that I've been part of for the last couple of years, which includes campaigners from Sussex as well. We're going to discuss this and take time to consider the repercussions. I think we'll also do that with an organisation called We Own It, who are campaigning for the renationalisation of the water industry. You know, I think I should say that the UK and Wales are the only territory that has a privatised water industry, and I don't think it's any surprise that it is actually nothing more than a legalised scam. That's what today has shown, and a national, if not international, disgrace.
What message do you think that this sends to, as I say, you've got Boycott Water Bills platform, giving advice to other people going through the same. What would your, having been through the process yourself, what takeaways for other people thinking about boycotting?
Boycott Water Bills has always given solid advice to anyone who wanted to take on the industry's failings, and that's why I've maintained this 4.5-year boycott of Southern Water's wastewater costs. That hasn't stopped literally thousands of people joining us, and we know because of contact with our website, boycottwaterbills.com, that we now have payment boycott action in all 11 wastewater areas. I don't think that anyone will be daunted by today's judgment. There have been several judgments before my own, but I do think that every single court appearance made by any individual water customer in this country who can manage to withhold payment and go all the way to court will find that in a court environment, they will actually be advancing in a very constructive way the need for the industry to be held to account. And if we can't do that as consumers, it has to be done by the government itself, and not in the form of the regulatory authorities, which have shown themselves to be wholly inadequate.
Is there any sort of, I know you talked about you're thinking about taking what the next steps are. Would you be looking for a way to actually directly engage or challenge some on water? Or is that the whole point, is that it's not possible, and that's what the point you're making today?
Well, today's court judgment has really been the perfect illustration of what we are up against. This has been really our battle from the start. As soon as we knew we had no powers under the Consumer Rights Act 2015 to either negotiate a lower payment or no payment at all for services that are wholly inadequate, we realised the injustice of the current situation. But it's very difficult to get that message across to other water consumers. Every court case that does that actually accomplishes something for us, and hopefully with greater awareness throughout the whole country of this unacceptable situation regarding our water industry with its crimes and its persistent harm for our environment and people's health, will helpfully galvanise people. We've certainly, been contacted by many people just by the court date here, let alone the amount of people that came to sit in on the case and afterwards, were very heartened actually by the judge's response to our case as defendants.
Julie, would you speak just briefly about the issues you've seen with Whitstable specifically and how that's impacted people?
Well, I along with an 8-page defence submission, I also submitted copious evidence about Southern Water's crimes from 2021, when they received their £90 million, record criminal fine, to 2026. And I also cited the fact that South East Water, who brought this case against me, the claim against me, of course, in January 2026, were not satisfying customers with even the provision of water. Thousands of customers were without water. Even the Maidstone MP, Helen Grant, said she was surprised how could anybody be paying their water bills with this going on. The fact is, we shouldn't be paying water bills. We shouldn't be paying anything to companies for poor service. But we are not receiving proper regulation by the authorities. So we have to continue to hold them to account ourselves.
Just so lastly, in a nutshell, you sound quite, even though you've lost the case today, you sound quite positive about what something like that reaction see there.
I'm incredibly heartened by the judge's clear understanding and sympathy for the case that we put forward. Ultimately, he was his hands were tied because this is a small claims court. So ultimately, he was just considering the law relating to an unpaid bill to South East Water. But larger than that, he explained many times that he's aware of the wider issues here and implications. And I think that we have to find another recourse to bring justice to water consumers in this country. And my absolute determination to do that has not been dulled by today's experience, and it certainly won't dull that of any other person who wants to put an end to the injustice that we're suffering at the hands of the water industry in the UK.
Thank you so much,
very
Julie.
much,
That
Julie.
was
Not at all.
Just before you go,
Yes.
can you just grab a picture?
Yes, of course.
Just there is perfect, not too far back. Okay, no one needs to get run over. And they'll come and shout at me again. Yeah. So that's fab. Thank you. There you go. 2 seconds.
Sorry, Tony, you've been so and you. I'm
No, it's fine. I will do literally 30 seconds
Yeah.
reaction, and then I'll
just
go
doing
back.
a photograph here.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Julie. It's
Not
lovely
at
to meet you
all.
in person. And yeah, it's lovely to meet you in person.
You too.
And,
Thanks so much.
Please keep in touch.
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, Brad Hampton says hello.
Oh,
by the way.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, that's lovely. Shall I do? Okay, one sec.
Tell me about how this all began. You mentioned in court about the Human Rights Act of 2015, and that's why you began to withhold payments to Southern. But if you could tell me that in your own words.
Yes, basically, in July 2021, Southern Water received a record criminal fine of £90 million for illegal spills. It focused on 6,971 illegal spills. And I think that really brought to national attention these kind of incidents that were happening within our water industry. I knew that according to the Consumer Rights Act 2015, if a company does not give satisfaction with its services, consumers are obliged to negotiate a lower rate or no rate at all of payment. But I wasn't aware that, in fact, the water industry, the water companies in this country are protected by the Water Industry Act 1991, which goes back to their privatisation. And essentially, that act gives them a statutory obligation to provide services for which we as consumers have a statutory right to pay. And it clearly appears that that's the case regardless of the level of service or whether there's no service at all. Today was all about us highlighting that fact and saying that the regulatory authorities who are meant to regulate the water industry they're not fit for purpose, and neither is the consumer complaints process. And the fact that we cannot get a legal recourse about disputes such as ours, where we withhold payment, contravenes Article 6 of the Human Rights Act.
That argument was put in court, and obviously the judge, I mean, he had to apply the law as it stands, and so today he's found a paper of South East Water who are acting on behalf of Southern Water that they didn't aim to. You can't have been too surprised that things went that way.
I'm not at all surprised at today's judgment, because I'm not the only person who has been brought to court for non-payment due to disputing the level of service. But I am surprised that the judge showed so much understanding of our dispute and also clear sympathy. I don't think anybody could argue, it was there in the court today, that he was not sympathetic to our cause, but in fact his hands were tied because he had to deal with the law.
Because you've got a lot of people behind you. There were people here in court today where you had the demonstrations as well. Do you feel a responsibility to them as well as yourself?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned in court, this isn't a case. This case is particular to my husband and I. It's our water account. But we went all this way. We continued to withhold payment for 4.5 years, facing court today on behalf of every single water consumer in this country who feels completely betrayed by the industry and who still is forced to pay for an inadequate service. So it was very important to us to get our points across. And in fact, it will continue. You know, even receiving a decision like today, we have now highlighted more so the obstacles that we face in trying to gain justice as water consumers.
What will you do next?
We will consider our options here, but it certainly will not be diminishing my determination to keep highlighting the injustice of this situation, and also to help anybody via our organisation, Boycott Water Bills, who come to us from all 11 wastewater areas in the country for advice on how to withhold their own payments.
So it's the end of this court case, but it's certainly not going to be written in.
It's certainly not the end of our campaign. We will continue, as will. I honestly believe that the government too, in not really coming forward to admit that privatisation has failed. England and Wales are the only privatised water companies, fully privatised water industries in the whole world. And there's a reason for that. Privatisation of something so important, so elemental as our water should never be sold for profit. It has to be brought back it has to be renationalised for justice to fully take place. And we'll continue to point up that argument too.
Thank you. That was brilliant.
No, not at all.
Hold it there. One second.
Waffling a bit there.
No, it's good. Let's do a bit of acting now.
Okay, yeah. Acting's easy.
No, basically, just
Acting's easy.
mean nothing. No, I thought you said.
Brilliant.
Julie, can I?
Nice to
What
see
do you
you.
think of Swale Cliff sewage works? I mean, that's people have to walk over the sewage.
They do, John. They do, and I mean, Southern Water is continually boasting about its its claims that it's trying to do things differently, but we really don't see anything different happening there. And as I mentioned in the court case as well, you know, for a company that in 2019 had the CEO of Ofwat say after an investigation that it wasn't just their poor operational performance that was so shocking in a case brought at that time, it was the fact that they had hid and deceived customers by manipulating water samples. That's truly shocking. When you have a company whose ethos has allowed them to hide and deceive customers of water samples and evidence, I don't tend to believe Southern Water and their claims about changing anything at all.
Yeah, I just do you know the people who live round the Swale Cliff sewage plant often sometimes have the sewage backing up into their toilets?
Yes, I'm aware of that. And even last Thursday, we were in Margate holding a protest outside Margate court there, because that's where this court case was originally scheduled last time. And shortly after our protest, there was sewage backing up down to the Turner Gallery.
Mm.
You know, a block drain there had Southern Water out. Local residents filmed it. It went up on the Kent Messenger site. It happens continually.
Thank you, Julie. It's a shame it just didn't go to a higher court.
It is, but as I said, in our defence, you know, we ask that this case should be referred to a higher court to consider the Article 6 issue and to conclude that the amounts that were payable by us as defendants should not be, that we shouldn't be obliged to pay them, because an assertion from South East Water that no contractual relationship exists between a water company and its customers only serves to underscore the human rights issue at the heart of our defence, that we have no court or tribunal in the UK to which we can take our disputes regarding inadequate service and receive judgment on those disputes. What happened today was South East Water got judgment on their dispute against us for non-payment, but we could not bring Southern Water to account because Southern Water simply wasn't here.
Yeah. This the whole law system is run by the City of London. They're the ones who write the laws, aren't they?
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a barrister, But I am aware of Article 6
Mm.
of the Human Rights Act, and that we are entitled to a fair trial, and there isn't a court or tribunal that we can take our dispute to. And that's the important point for all water consumers. It really is, that we need justice, but we're not getting justice.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Julie. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much for
Good-
coming
good-
today, John.
Good,
Thank you.
good appearance in court.
Thank you so much. And I was so pleased that the judge showed so much sympathy and respect for our case.
You were very eloquent. I don't think it could ignore you.
Thank you very much
All right,
indeed.
thank you, Julie. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.